Welcome to this week's Eccentric Minute, brought to you by Eccentric. This week's Eccentric Minute is one of my favorite exercises to do with the K-pulley, and that is the pull-through. Guys, once you've figured out about how far you need to walk out with the K-pulley, grab whatever attachment you're using for the pulley, walk yourself out there, and really push your hips back at the K-pulley. From there, when you hit that stretch, really punch your hips forward, keep your chest up, and try to extend your knees and your hips all the way through. And this is where one of the major benefits of using a flywheel kicks in, as it pulls you into a deeper stretch as you push your hips back into your hamstrings and your hip extensors, so that you really open it up and stretch everything out in the back. This is an exercise that I'm sure your athletes are going to love to hate, but reap awesome rewards from. I really hope you enjoyed this week's Eccentric Minute. Make sure you check them out at eccentric.com to find out everything you need about the K-box and the K-pulley. Being a strength and conditioning professional requires constant pursuit of better knowledge, better methods, and better means. But what if there was a place where strength and conditioning coaches could learn from some of the most innovative practitioners in the world, such as Jeff Moyer, Lachlan Wilmot, William Wayland, James the Thinker Smith, and Keir Wenham Flatt? Well, you could find multiple lectures from each of these top-level coaches and a few lectures and examples from yours truly as well, all in the Strength Coach Network. The Strength Coach Network is going to bring you well over 100 different lectures from some of the top practitioners in the world to be your one-stop shop for your continuing education and professional development. So hop on over to strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASP today and get your 48-hour trial for only $1. That's strengthcoachnetwork.com/CVASPS to get your 48-hour trial for only $1. I look forward to seeing you in the Strength Coach Network. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, guys, we have an absolutely awesome talk. I get to sit down and talk with Matt Nein about how he has incorporated the largest resource he has on campus, the student body, to help build one of the top programs in the country. After a real quick intro, Matt's going to dive right into the role that he sees the students filling, in the unique situation that is Division III athletics. He's going to share with us some hiccups he had along the way, including how he thinks he could have better had the administration involved, and how bringing them in and actually putting them in the front lines and understanding what's going on has truly impacted the development of this program. And after we get through that, we're going to talk about mental toughness and where he sees that in training, how they evaluate it, and how they quantify it. And then we're going to finish talking about, the role of periodization and how that has evolved through his 15 years up there in Maryland. Guys, this is really an awesome talk. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Coach, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, man. We were just wrapping a little bit off camera. I'm fired up for this because this is something that I think, people, there might be a little fake confusion when it comes to some of these ideas and things that are going on right now. But, for the 3/4 of a human listening right now that doesn't know who Matt is and how he got up to Salisbury, let us know how you got up there and what you got cooking, brother.
Cool, man. Well, I've been here at Salisbury this is my 15th season now. So prior to that, got my master's degree in applied health physiology. Was thinking about moving into cardiorespiratory therapy and so forth, and started to get into it, and clientele-wise, it just wasn't my cup of tea. And I look back to as I played as a college athlete. I was a college baseball player at Towson, and strength and conditioning was something that was extremely passionate for me then, and was really allowed me to be successful. And so I started to pursue my career in that. I've been able to work with Tim Bishop. At that time, he was the head strength coach for the Baltimore Orioles, now Perform Fit in the Baltimore area. Coming out of my master's degree, I applied for the Toronto Blue Jays as a minor league strength coach, worked with them for a season, and then I did some other random personal work, some teams here and there at Salisbury, and Salisbury position opened up, and I was head strength coach at 24. Had no business whatsoever being a head strength coach at 24. I can tell you that now. I mean, the amount of stuff that I've, you look back And I still have some of those programs from back then. I'm like, what in the heck was I doing? And but we're here now, and so I've been here for, like I said, 15 years. And in 2018, I was named the NSCA's College Strength Coach of the Year, which was an awesome honor. And having the opportunity to present all over the place, and that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, man, and really working into some unique alterations when it comes to developing the training process with the young men and women that you get to work with.
Yeah, it's like we were talking earlier, is that some of the Division III rules and so forth that we have, you really got to play the game a lot, and be on top of your game with what you have. It's also the limitations. Division III school of what we have available to us. When I first started, it was myself. That was it. I had nobody else. To be able to develop a program, and you take 21 teams and it's you, and that's it. How do you get the same expectations that a program that would have 5 or 6 strength coaches or strength coaches at a Division I level, where every team may have their own? I mean, it's the same expectations from our coaching staff and our athletic development, our athletic department staff, and so you got to figure it out and really develop that and build that. And so we've been able to take our program, and we have 3 graduate assistants now. We have a little bit of an undergrad program, and for me, I'd rather have volunteers than interns, and so it's a little bit different. And the reason being is not that I don't do it, we do it, but from an intern standpoint, we commit a tremendous amount of work to them, and they contribute back, but they're gone at the end of the semester, and then we got to do it all again. Well, what if I found somebody who was a freshman or a sophomore who was really into maybe just lifting or exercise science and wasn't 100% sure? Maybe they were an athlete in high school or even an athlete now. And what if I got them to volunteer? And what if they came in, they started volunteering with one team, and then all of a sudden now they were with 2 teams or 3 teams, and so that's what we've done. And we have a program now where generally in our program each year we have probably 2 or 3 volunteers who have been with us. We just had a freshman start this past fall, and so the idea would be that he is with us for the next 4 years, and then getting internships in between. But again, we invest in him every semester and all the time. By his 3rd year, I mean, that dude, he should be rock solid and ready to rock and roll as a coach. I mean, puts himself in the best position to get a graduate assistant position and move in the correct steps and progressions from there. But we benefit so much more from that because he has the experience. He knows the athletes. Sometimes they know the athletes better than our GAs because they've been here longer. One of our guys, he had been with us for 3 years, and he just graduated a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and he had been with our guys for 3 years, and where our GAs are 2 and out. So it's to me, I like that model better. Just practicality, in what I do. I also manage the rec center on the opposite side of campus, so I back and forth throughout the day. If I'm not over in training an athlete, I'm back into the rec center, or I'm designing a program, or we're just moving all over campus. So I don't, not that I don't want to contribute, help those, interns grow. I just don't think we have the ability to optimize their growth right now. But we do with the volunteers because we can spend a lot more time with them. So
well, that's a pretty awesome plan and thing that you can work on, because just thinking of it selfishly, full disclosure, like if you're sending them out for internships too, they can bring back stuff to help you.
Yeah, and we've had, that's probably one of the biggest things that we've been able to see is what goes on where and what was benefiting. Especially we come back in, we have our meetings after their internships, and what did you like, what did you not like, what can we adopt or modify or grow from. I think it's because most of the time you'll send your interns out, you may never, they're probably not going to impact your program from there unless they come back on as full-time staff or something along that line. But they have the opportunity, and usually, let's say one of our guys right now, he's actually working with our women's basketball team, so he's actually now designing some of the programming for that and implementing his designs. Well, that guy's he's going to be ready to get a job, and part of it is on my end. If I want good strength coaches to come in here every 2 years as GAs, I got to make sure they get out of here. We don't have, it's not name recognition, we're not, a big time, Big Ten school or something like that people are going to recognize necessarily Salisbury. But we want to make sure that we have a list of everyone who's come out of here and where they've gone and what they're up to, and, head strength coaches, Division I's and, Division III's, major D1 assistants. We just want people to know that so that I can get better coaching. If I get better coaching, it comes back full circle to our athletes. Our athletes get better coaching. And that's how we're going to continue to grow as a program. I guess maybe it's a little different than other places, but I think it's what we have to do based off of the model or Division III model that we're in.
Well, first of all, as a SUNY Cortland grad and a Division III guy,
jeez,
Salisbury, I know the name. I know it probably too well, and vice versa.
Yes, most definitely.
But I think, too, what's awesome is that you have, what's the word I want to use here? Not a cycle, but a system-ish, where you're bringing them in, you're putting them out. You're bringing them in for 3 to 4 years, and then you're bringing them in for 2, and you're moving them out. But when you're looking at, I think that the big unique thing that you have that we all need to be better at is you have a situation where you can utilize the largest resource that you have at an institution, and that's the kids.
Yeah.
So how have you ended out building this curriculum, do we want to call it?
Yeah.
As you start to develop these young coaches alongside developing the young athletes?
Yeah, so, initially it started, we were just in the weight room, guys were intrigued and so forth, so we were just kind of bringing people on. It was more like eyes than it was anything else in the room, because that's, at the time, that's what we had available to us. We didn't have the resource of educational time, and my commitment wasn't there. It wasn't until some of my staff started to grow in terms of GAs that we could actually really start to set a curriculum. But first off, I go into the classrooms. So I initially, for about 10 or 11 years, I taught at the undergrad level, but I taught the class strength training technique and program design. And it was a 1 hour in our, the lab occurred in our weight room, for our athletes' weight room, so they got to see it. And it's, it's on the opposite side of campus over by our athletic field. So most of the general student population don't even know it exists. And, but I go into the entry level strength conditioning classes, and I just talk about strength conditioning, the profession, and what it is and what we do. And, that is that big umbrella to, hey, we have something here that if you're interested in, we value, what you have the opportunity to bring, and we'll test run you. And if it's, we've had students who come in, they think it's for them, they spend a semester with us, and they're like, Coach, I don't think this is what I want to do anymore. But, which is fine. Yeah. And I'm glad you realized that. But, the one thing is they weren't allowed to quit. We didn't just say, hey, you can't, if you're going to commit, you're going to commit. Now the only ways that, if they're not following the curriculum, they're not completing their work and things along that line, yes, they'll get ousted. But I think in the long run, that's going to negatively impact them down the road anyway. So I think it started there. Even some of my GAs, Chris Messina, he's a AAA strength coach for the Boston Red Sox. I found him in the weight room. He was a grad student. Him and a guy that he came in with were just working out. And, he's a big guy, and they just start striking up conversation, and he comes and volunteers with us for a semester, and just like that, I mean, the guy was just lights out good. And, it just so happened one of our GAs was leaving, and he was right there ready to rock and roll, and he just moved right into that position. So I think it helps being that I manage the rec center, where I get to see all these, at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want the ones who are passionate, right? We don't want, I got to do this for class in order to graduate. And I think that's what we were finding out of the internships, is that because of where our location is, we're located on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. There's not many other schools around. The closest outside of UMES, the closest school is probably going to be 2.5 hours away. maybe Dell State, but again, we don't have a lot, right? And so even through the process, people were, I guess they were hiding who they really were, and playing a great game in the interviews and the process that we were taking as to interview them as interns, and they get into it and there was just no passion, and so that's where we started. It's like, you know what, the people who are passionate are the people who are in there doing it on their own, who are getting after it by themselves, who just want to work and just love it. Let's start there. Let's get to those people. And you know what, if we ask 10 and none do it, that's fine. We'll ask 10 more and eventually we'll find one or two, and usually that's about what we get. So sometimes they come through the classroom, sometimes they come just by being in the weight room and and finding those people, and again then they just kind of go. And we've had other people now, to the point now where we've been doing this for probably about 6 years, where they're coming to us now, where they'll ask, hey, do you have any GA positions available? I said, no, but I do have a volunteer program. And they're willing to accept part of the volunteer program just to be in our program, which is good.
No doubt, man. And I think that it's really awesome to kind of make some lemonade out of the lemons that some people would complain about, having to be in that fitness center, doing that side thing in there when it comes to coaching athletes.
Yeah, it's it is a lot, and you could easily complain. It's one of those things, though, in terms of mindset, and we were talking about mental toughness and so forth. It's just, like, who likes to be around those people, who are always bitching and complaining, and it gets you nowhere, it gets nothing out of it. But what happens if we do take that and say, hey, you know what, this is what I was dealt, let's run with it and let's get after it, and then let's take it to a level. And this happened, I want to say probably about 6 years ago. Came to me, I was higher up, a boss of mine came to me and said, I never asked you to grow the program. And yeah, I know, right? Like, it's just like a dagger to the heart. He's like, oh, you're doing a great job. He's like, but I never asked you to grow the program. I said, you know what, at that moment, it was maybe 6 to 8 years ago now, I was like, at that moment, I was like, you know what, not only are we going to just kill the program, we're going to take it up like 10 notches, and we're going to freaking blow this thing out of the water, and try to make it one of the best in the country at what we do. And it's, why not, right? It's just what you're dealt. If you don't like it, get out. If you're gonna stay, get after it.
Bro, he said, like, I didn't ask you to grow. You just found him free workers to help the athletes get better and take better care of them, and he was questioning that?
Well, yeah, it's because how, like, we're coming in, it's like things are growing, things are getting better. Obviously then we're looking for, not say more things, but it's like, well, what's your budget? What's your,
I got you.
You're doing more with I guess you're putting more out there, but you're not getting anything back. But it was things that, like, we needed, like, like, my budget is a budget where I go and ask. That's it. Like, I don't have anything written on paper. I go and ask for things, and I guess we have a list and we manage what we have, but we have no dollar figure attached to it. And so it's one of those things at the end, you hopefully you get things, but we're doing more. So more is being utilized, more is being, let's say, damaged or broken, but how bands are, they don't last more than a year generally, or just your general equipment that is, every year it turns over, year to 2 years. Your med balls, things like that, but they're not going to last for 10 years like some of the equipment's going to. But we didn't have that available. So now all of a sudden the program has grown to where there's so much more being utilized, and we had it available, but it's the depreciation pieces were never looked at or addressed or even thought of. And then all of a sudden now we're coming in and saying, hey, this is what's happening. And so I was probably about 5 or 6 years into working at that point. And I was still young and had no clue, and about depreciation of equipment and what all that should be, and how that's probably one of the first things you should do if you take over a job is understand your equipment and what the depreciation is, so that whoever your bosses are have a clue of what's going on, because we're in that struggle again right now, and that's kind of what ended up happening. And that's kind of, I think, what stemmed it all, is like I never asked you to grow, and because we grew it, yet we were benefiting the athletes. They were getting stronger and more powerful, and athletically we were, I think we were top 15 in the Directors Cup, and yeah, kind of get you.
Yeah, so I guess then my question would be, when you look back at that, you know, how could you advise people listening right now as to ways that they can take better advantage of that type of a growth situation and still keep their wits about them and their feet under them, so that not all of a sudden they try to go too far too fast and then they run into things? Because this, to me, what you're saying sounds a lot like some of the monitoring stuff that we were doing 5 or 6 years ago, where we got going too fast, too much, too big, too soon, and all of a sudden everybody was like, what's going on here? Put the brakes
Yeah.
on. And it's like, guys, we're winning, we're healthy, and like everything's good. Like, let's not mess with it. But it was too much, right? Like, there's too many things going on too fast for people. So where do you see how people can go in this direction and like kind of matrix what
Well,
you ran into?
I think part of my issue was, again, like I was 24, and like I said, I somehow lucked into the position here, I guess. But I didn't have a growth plan. I think that was kind of, I had what I wanted in my mind, but never had it communicated to administration. And I think that was part of the issue. And I don't know if on the other end, what administration, I didn't have what their ideas were either. I knew what I wanted, but one, didn't write it down, didn't communicate it with my administration, and didn't know what they wanted necessarily. And so it just built that, great administration, they kind of let you work, they let you get after it, they let you do your own thing. And like you said, we were winning, we're doing well, and there, no problems, no issues, they kind of stay out of it. And then it got to that point, and I think that's where, if I was a little bit more upfront in terms of communicating better my ideas and understanding theirs, that we may have been in a better situation, even more so now. And I think since then, that's where we're at right now, and we're, over the past probably 2 or 3 years, we've done a much better job of communicating that, and progressing with the growth of the program from where it's at, or what we're even capable of growing towards. So we've done a much better job since that time. But it was a good learning experience, I guess, for me. It puts you right into the fire.
Oh yeah,
know.
I bet.
So,
And that's hard, man, because we're all like that dumb crazy when we start, right? And we're in our mid-20s, and we think that we can work 80 to 100 hours a week and run through everything for as long as as long as our heart's beating. But it's eventually that AGE thing catches up with us, and it doesn't work like that anymore.
yeah, that's kids. That's the other one. Your kids and so forth, and that's when it gets to that point. And then, like I said, I really wish I would have been able to, almost foresee that ahead of time. That, because like you said, in your mind, you're just trying to grow things. You want to become the best you can, and hopefully that's what everybody wants. To be the best, and do what you can and do what you have to do to make it as great as you can. But like you said, you get to that point, and then it's like, okay, now what? And you may have hit your ceiling or your limitations, and what if you just would have done this a little bit better? May have, it's just like what we ask for in the weight room, right? And how we train and sleep and nutrition and all that, and athletes hitting their ceilings because of lack of that, and just same concept. Just didn't apply it to my career,
Yeah, no doubt, man. And I think that on top of that, it's something that when you get into those situations, the big tricky factor with all of that is, and the hard part probably too, when you're mid to late 20s or even your early 30s when you're still really young in the game, you're only like 8 to 10 years into it, is not taking it personally and
Yeah.
not letting it beat you up and being, I mean, shoot, it's still, there are things that still get to me like that, you know, where it's like if someone would have said that to me, like I would have been devastated.
Yeah. And it was. I mean, it was, but again, it goes back to like I guess maybe the way I look at my mindset and so forth is again I can't let it. I can't, what can I do? Like it is what it is, and that's what he believes, and so maybe I didn't do a good enough job of getting him to believe in what I do as a program and what my profession is or my program is and so forth. So you know what, I got to figure out how to make it better, how to show him the greater value in it. And so it was a lot of change where it was now, more inviting in, come see what we do, and actually legitimately trying to schedule that to get him in, to get them to come in and see what it is that we do. And because it had never been there before, before I got there, it was an assistant, he did a fantastic job. He was an assistant football, assistant track coach, and ran strength and conditioning and predominantly just did it with those two teams. I mean, the guy's already, recruiting and doing all this. Like, how much more can he contribute to the other, 19 teams or 18 teams or whatever it is from that point? And so all of a sudden now you have somebody that's their sole role. I don't know if they knew at that time what it was even going to entail. But, you learn from it, and hopefully we, don't allow those mistakes to happen, and hopefully others can learn from it too and go.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it, because especially in a situation like that where you're now able to show them what you're able to provide and you're showing them how things have escalated and improved, that then that next step should be them coming back and being like, oh, now let's see what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, and it is. I mean, it's we've seen a lot of improvements and growth since that point. From our, the administration and so forth. They're fully supportive now, and not that they weren't then. It was just like I said, it wasn't. They just didn't know, I don't think, and the value wasn't expressed well enough. And now, resources and our athletic administration is really supportive of what we do, and which is fantastic. I couldn't ask for any a better group.
So then, where do you see this now evaluating and evolving to, Coach? Because I think that this is something that is unique. And now that you have seen some of the hiccups in the maturing process of all of this, where do you see this continuing to evolve and to grow?
See, I mean, that's the hard part. It's one of those things. It's like, we've got to sit down. I've got to sit down and figure out exactly what that looks like. And it's consistent, reviewing, looking back of what we've done, where we've been, how are we growing, and a lot of it, I would say probably over the past 2 or 3 years, a lot of it has to do with money. I mean, you get to that point where you're creating, growth programs, you're creating things with what the means that you have available to you. A lot of it at that point, up to then, there wasn't much that we could come up with, or that I could come up with, that from a continued growth, right, of how do we stay on top of things. To me, that's the most important, because everybody's lifting, everybody's training, right? Everybody's doing the same thing predominantly, same workload, same rep schemes. I mean, it's, so one, I got to believe that I can coach it better than others. But then I also got to figure out what are we doing that others aren't doing. And so that's kind of some of the things that we've looked at. And I think some of the big things in there, how we assess and analyze commitment, and some of the work that we try to bring in with mental toughness. We're never going to have sports psychologists. I mean, maybe say never, but not in my lifetime we're going to have sports psychologists at the Division III level. And so I've got to brush up on what I can, and how can we get in the simplest ideas of concepts into our programs, so that when the time comes that our guys maybe just, or girls, are just a little bit ahead or have the ability to change their mindset and refocus, or, we assess and analyze our commitment. We put a statistical number to it so that we can actually see how committed you are, and, that came from an article, a Catalyst article, and it looked at, it started about talking about how come you're not getting what you want or what you expect. And so what they did is they broke it down into 5 categories. And so since then, we've taken this model and adjusted it and kind of made it ours. And we look at 5 key components to training, becoming the best athlete you can become. And so we say lifting is 1, running, obviously, nutrition, recovery, and then playing the game. So the skill-related work associated with the game. And so if you work on those 5 pieces, you're going to become a better athlete, right? You're going to be more successful at what you do. And then they all interplay. A lot of the mental toughness pieces kind of umbrella all of those. And, we go through an assessment and we analyze, and we have the athletes analyze the other athletes, and everybody sees it. So it is kind of eye-opening sometimes. We have them analyze themselves, because I think it's critical to see what your peers believe, your work ethic, the effort that you give every day. Because they're going to see it a lot different than I'm only going to see it in the running pieces and the lifting pieces. They're going to see it in almost everything that you do. And so, well, you know what? It is what it is. At the end of the day, if you don't like it, you have 2 choices. Either you're done or you change. This is kind of the way it goes. And, they've been, pretty. I remember a guy, he came to me, he said, "Coach, what do you think?" He's like, "Do you think I'm here?" I'm like, there's times where I've seen you a little bit higher, but there's also times where I've seen you a little bit lower here in the weight room, in terms of just your focus and the effort that you put in. And I think it was eye-opening from him. And, you could see the change. He was a guy that was like, you know what? This isn't going to be me. I don't want to be remembered as this or be that guy. And, a lot of our athletes, they'll come in and they'll score in the 60s to 70s, as their commitment to these 5 categories. And some of them will be highly committed to the weight room, but have a low commitment to nutrition, or other pieces of recovery from sleep, stress, things like that. They'll have, low commitment levels to those, high commitments to other things. And so it's just a matter of the awareness. Most athletes, probably because mom and dad have, really pumped them up. Their heads are this big, that they're the best in the world and they're the greatest of all time. And, and I don't say we deflate them, but we want to make sure that, hey, if we're going to grow and we're going to get to the right spot, we need to understand where we are. It's just like testing, right? We need to stay where we are to understand where we're going to go. And, that's kind of where it all started. So those are kind of some of the things that I look for is what are we doing differently than everybody else? And that's how our growth is. So if we're not going to get the money, I've got to dial in and figure out what's on next. And the other we talked about was fluid periodization. So
yeah, man, no doubt about it. And let's run down that here a little bit, because I think that that's something that, obviously Dr. Morris kind of coined that and got that going, then Mladen is talking about agile periodization, but I think that people taking things and looking at this as in this sort of light is really the direction we're going to start going.
Yeah, I think so. I think we almost have to. We were talking, the modern day athlete is, maybe we just didn't know back then, but I don't believe I'm much different than the modern day athlete. I wasn't getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep. I was eating dining hall food. We didn't have, the nutrition. I was a Division I player. Like, we didn't have the nutrition stations or anything of the sort. My sophomore year was the first year we had a strength coach. This is a Division I, program. And that was in that would have been 98. And so I don't know if it's that much different or it's just something now. It's like we're more cognizant of what's going on through our athlete monitoring systems. They're kind of indicating what's going on with the athlete, and it makes a lot of sense if you look at it. If somebody's, what I guess how it happened for me is we had a swimmer, and we started our warm up. We weren't really doing anything from a monitoring systems or anything, any questionnaires or any of that at this point. This was a few years ago, and started to warm up, and it just didn't look right. You know how when somebody's kind of getting ready to pass out or puke or something, they turn like a ghost. Well, this girl, she turned like a ghost and says, is everything okay? She's like, yeah, I didn't get much sleep last night. I was like, well, did you eat anything? She's like, no, I came from the library. I'm like, this was a 6 a.m. lift. Like, you didn't sleep at all last night, and you didn't eat since dinner at maybe 5, 6 o'clock the night before. She's like, yeah, that's about right. Like, well, obviously you're done. You're not going to lift right now because it doesn't, behoove you to do that. But it got me thinking. It's like, well, if that's her, like, what's everyone else doing? Like, how many people are sleeping or not eating or, so forth. And then if I'm prescribing something, is that the ideal prescription for everybody? And again, part of fluid periodization is really starting to look at the individualization. And that's kind of what agile periodization too is, really beginning to individualize as much as we can based off of the resources that are available. So, is programming, 85% today, is that ideal for someone who has had lack of sleep? Could that negatively impact our program or what I have designed? Let's say today's, Monday, could that negatively impact what I have designed for our Wednesday or our Friday lift? And could we be instilling workloads too soon that puts us in a super compensation negative, and our end results were worse or not nearly as good as we potentially could be 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks down the road. And and where we started working with the concept is in season. And then again, you start thinking a little bit more. It's like, well, if we're experiencing this in season, do we experience it out of season? And the way out of seasons now are maybe even more intense than some of our in seasons. With our our non-traditional seasons and play, and a lot of our teams, they're working on their own, doing a lot more than maybe, especially some of our, like a baseball or something like that. There might be a lot more downtime in season than there is in the off season. And so it just kind of gets you start thinking. That's kind of what the theory of fluid periodization really is about, is taking your monitoring systems and start to look at what we're seeing on a daily basis and start to adjust some of our programming accordingly. Now, there's some easy, simple ways. Velocity-based training is a simple way that can look at that. Utilizing repetitions in reserve, some of Tertiar's work, and this is kind of some of the stuff that we're diving into now, is looking at our fatigue percentages, things along that line. But I think we've just got to do better. If the variance of 1RM is roughly like 18% on either side, so if we're basing something off of a 1RM, if I'm putting at, let's say you tested and you didn't test well, your 1RM could be 15 to 18% higher than that. And so if we're basing it off of the 80, and then we have a training max off of that may be 2.5 to 5% lower, wow, now we're almost 20% away from a potential competitive max. Now you're looking at 15% decline. Are we going to get the results that we want, based off of using that information? I think we've got to be better than that.
No doubt, man, because you can always live to fight another day.
Yeah. And then every day, you just don't know. We don't know what the athletes are going through. The amount of stress that's put on now from academics. Everyone's got to have a 4.0. They've got to have, straight A's across the board. And it's just kind of the society has changed a little bit. Heck, if I got a B, I might have been happy, I'll pass.
I'd still be happy.
No. But there's a lot of people. It's like, oh man, I've got this test that I've got to do well. Like, what do you have in the class? I got a 93. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. You want to do well. I have no problems with that.
That is well.
Yeah. And you're not going to fail because of the way in which you will go about stuff. Like you'll be fine, but again, it's this high level of stress, and we put it on ourselves, and then we don't know how to deal with it. And so what we end up seeing is we see lack of sleep, or just, it ends up causing a delayed recovery, and that could negatively impact the workloads that I put in. And, so we want to see, is the work that we were doing, where we were using set prescriptions and really defined in what we were doing, is that optimal, or does this theory have relevance? And, so we've been doing it with our in-season groups for mine, basketball and football, and we've seen a tremendous amount of benefits from it, growth from it. We've started it with our lacrosses out of season. Part of it is an educational process, especially, we're using repetition in reserve. And so it's very difficult for them to understand that. It's a learning process. So, it comes and goes, but we're working on it. We're developing it. But, from an injury standpoint, I think we're down, from each of those groups in seasons and our out of season groups. We did do it out of season with football last year. After our first 7 weeks, or our last 7 weeks, and then through the summer, we utilized it. The issues that we have in the summer, our athletes aren't here, so gosh knows, what they're doing, if they're doing anything. I have zero control over that. So that's can throw some of our data off a little bit of what's going on.
But no, Matt, that's awesome stuff, man. And what it is it's making the best with what you got, and making sure that you're moving and doing the best things for the kids that you get to work with every day. And I think that's awesome stuff, brother. So let me get you out of here with this though, my man. Like, where can people see more with what you're doing? Where can they follow you, figure things out, and all those things?
Social media, I try to have a large presence on the SIGs for the NSCA. Again, I think, one, it helps our program continue to grow and puts us out there as well. But also, I've learned a tremendous amount from just all the posts that come on there. So you can find me on there. Just search my name and I'll be there. Instagram, I do a fair amount on Instagram, not a tremendous amount. I'm starting to get into that a little bit more. Other than that, I'm presenting, this will probably air before then, but at NSCA Coaches Conference, I believe I'll be presenting at Juniata's clinic this coming summer. And so I try to get a fair amount of them in. But again, at the end, just shoot me an email. I'll be more than happy to get back to you. My email is ma9, Nein, at salisbury.edu. Feel free to just shoot me an email. Like I'll share anything that I've got. Like I said, I always believe that I'm going to coach you better than you anyway. So it is what it is, right?
No doubt, man. No doubt.
But yeah, I'll be happy to share anything I've got with anybody. So
awesome, Matt. Well, listen, brother, I truly appreciate your time. This is sensational stuff, man. People are going to love it.
Cool, man. That's awesome. I'm excited. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And again, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help out however I can.
No doubt, brother. Well, we'll be in touch real soon.
Awesome, man. Take care.
You too.
And a huge thanks to Matt Nein for spending the time with us today. Guys, just some open, honest, candid sharing from a coach who's doing it all right there, right? He's running the fitness center. He's coaching the athletes. He's developing a program. He's developing coaches. And he's developing himself along the way, too. And I think that this is one thing that we all overlook, and I'm definitely going to point the thumb here a bit. I don't do great with interns, and I need to do better when it comes to bringing coaches in and mentoring and doing those things. But at the end of the day, Matt's got a sensational program and really laid the blueprint out for all of us here. So I can't thank Matt enough for being so open, honest, and candid in his sharing today, and really, opening my eyes to some things that we can do better. I hope you took as much away from this talk as I did, guys. And as always, if you did enjoy it, please share it to the social media outlet of your choice, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. As always, we're just trying to get the best information out there to all the great coaches that we can. And as always, guys, thank you for everything that you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.